Does everybody understand that? Okay, so we understand that appeals to tradition are no good. Okay? All right, provincialism. I'm on page 128 now. Okay? Oh, the examples I have, I don't want to do that. Provincialism, think about it as an appeal to group loyalty. Okay, appeal to group loyalty. Or another way of thinking about it is people want you to do or believe something based on pure pressure, right? So this is what we are doing, and you want to be part of the we, so you're gonna do it? Well, no, they need to have a good reason other than what? Appeal to group loyalty. Does everybody understand? What? Provincialism? It's on page 128, okay? So let me give you an example. And by the way, passages may contain more than one fallacy, okay? And you're supposed to identify the one that's most prominent, as it were, okay? So I'm reading passage 127. It says, "This country has always been a Christian nation. The founding fathers of this country believed in a Christian God. Every president from Washington to the president has been some form of a Christian." So right now there's an appeal to tradition going on. Does everybody see that? But never mind that, because that's not what we want to focus on. You aren't a true American if you aren't Christian. This is where we get the provincialism in, right? You want to be a true American, so you better be a what? Christian. Does everybody see that? Hence, no true American would ever vote for a non-Christian presidential candidate. So they're appealing to your group loyalty, right? Well, what if your group is about to do something stupid? That doesn't mean that you should necessarily follow the group. Does everybody understand that? They need to offer a good reason why we, this group, are going to do so-and-so. Other than, we're doing this, you should too. Okay? Okay. Okay. The next section is entitled Evidence. And up are the fallacies of circular argument and begging the question. And look, most textbooks in critical thinking and logic conflate these two, okay? They treat them as one and the same thing. We are going to make a hard and fast distinction between circular argument and begging the question, okay? So circular argument, what is circular argument? A circular argument occurs when the conclusion is used in the premises, either implicitly or explicitly. So you're arguing in a circle, you're assuming A to prove A, and that's no proof whatsoever. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so let me give you the classic example. I'm looking at argument 128 on page 130. It says, the Bible says that God exists. What the Bible says is true. What the Bible says is true because the authors of the Bible were divinely inspired. Therefore, God exists. Now, the conclusion is God exists, okay? And so what I'm saying is somewhere in the premises, 1, 2, or 3, there's an assumption being made that God exists. And then you're just arguing in a circle. So the question is, look at premises 1, 2, and 3. The Bible says that God exists. What the Bible says is true, and what the Bible says is true because the authors of the Bible were divinely inspired. Which one of those premises assumes that God exists?
I think the first one.
That doesn't assume it. It just says the Bible says that God exists. That can be true without assuming that God exists.
What the Bible says is true. Because
So are you on premise 2 or premise 3? Say 3.
3.
Yeah, you're right. So look, what the Bible says is true because the authors of the Bible were divinely inspired. In order to be divinely inspired, there has to be a what? A divinity, a God, right? No one can be divinely inspired without there being a God to inspire them. Does everybody understand that? So premise 3 assumes that God exists. So that argument then just argues in a circle. Assumes that God exists to prove that God exists. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So that's a circular argument. Okay. Begging the question, which we're saying is a different kind of thing, uses a premise that needs support of its own. So it uses a questionable premise. Now, it's a premise that most people who accept the conclusion of the argument are willing to accept, but people who don't already accept the conclusion are going to say, wait a minute, why should I believe that? Okay? So you're begging us to question one of the premises, as it were. Okay? So let me give you an example. I'm reading 129. It is morally wrong to kill a being that possesses a soul. Cows possess souls. Hence, it's morally wrong to kill cows for consumption by humans. Okay. Any of those premises you'd like to question? Which one?
2.
Right. You might want to say, wait. Cows possess souls? I need evidence of that first. Does everybody understand that? Now, some people believe that non-human animals can possess souls, while other people do not. Does everybody understand that? And so if you believe that cows possess souls, you're going to think that this argument is great. But if you don't, you're going to say, wait. You need to prove premise 2 before I'm going to buy into this argument. Everybody understand that? Okay. So that's the difference between begging the question and circular argument. Okay. Next fallacy, I'm on page 131, is a fallacy of suppressed evidence. This fallacy occurs when someone intentionally or otherwise omits evidence contrary to their conclusion. Okay, so they're arguing for blah, and they give you some evidence for blah, but guess what? There's a whole pile of evidence against blah, and they intentionally ignore it, or by ignorance ignore it. Does everybody understand that? So, for example, I'm reading passage 130. Why should I give up smoking? My Nana has been smoking since she was 14 years old, and she turned 92 today. This proves there's nothing wrong with smoking. Now that I think about it, I'm going to step outside and light up. So they're trying to say that what? There's nothing wrong with smoking, and proof is my Nana, 92-year-old smoker. Okay? Does that settle the matter? No, because what? There's countless evidence that show that what? The more you smoke, on average, the shorter your life will be. Does everybody understand that? And they have omitted that evidence, and if we had that evidence, then we would say, smoking is not any good. Does everybody understand that? So it would go against their conclusion. So if they're leaving out evidence that goes against their conclusion, it's fallacy of suppressed evidence. Okay? Suppressed gives the idea that it's intentional, but we can imagine that someone might also do it accidentally because they're just not aware. Okay, all right. Next fallacy is appeal to ignorance. And this can happen in one of 2 ways. The lack of evidence that X is being used as evidence that not X, or the lack of evidence of not X is being used as evidence for X. Okay? So the lack of evidence is being used as evidence. Okay? And let me give you some examples, and then you'll see. Okay, I'm on page 132, example 131. There is no evidence that ties Joe to the bank robbery. Therefore, Joe didn't rob the bank. Just because there's no evidence that he did it, doesn't mean that he what? Didn't do it, right? So using lack of evidence as proof that he didn't do it, okay? Flipping it around, we could say this: Joe has no alibi, therefore Joe robbed the bank. The fact that you can't prove that you didn't rob the bank doesn't mean that you what? Did. It's just that simple, okay? So those are appeal to ignorance. And so remember, it's a lack of evidence being used as evidence. What happens on the test a lot of times is people will say, that's a stupid argument. They'll say, oh, appeal to ignorance. No, no, no. Appeal to ignorance is a very particular kind of fallacy. Don't generalize ignorance, stupid, that's stupid. Appeal to ignorance. Don't do that. Everybody got that? Okay. Now, complex question is, well, in some sense it's not a fallacy, but it's a very powerful rhetorical device that discombobulates people. So we're including it here, okay? What is a complex question? A complex question is a question that makes an unwarranted assumption, okay? And so any way you answer the question, you are going to concede the assumption when it might not be true. So let me give you a for instance. I'm reading passage 133 on page 132. Mr. Rogers, have you ever confided your sexual desires for children to a friend or family member? Does everybody see that Mr. Rogers can't answer that question? If he says, no, I have not confided my sexual desires for children to a friend or family member, what is the person going to say? So you've kept it a secret all these years, right? And if he says yes, well then now we know he has those desires.